14.3 Session Plan, Session and Program Reviews. Joseph Barra. The client will be working the whole of his upper body throughout the session, in relation with his goal of gaining muscle mass throughout his 6-week program. My first choice of training was plyometric, but chose to use circuit training of the upper body for the client due to an injury in his ankle. I chose plyometric training as the client is a football player and will mainly use his legs throughout when playing football. Therefore, plyometric training aimed at his legs would be best suited for the client. Despite his injury, the client felt like he would still be able to partake in plyometric training, but I have decided not to do it as the client also has a football game on the same day. Partaking in a high-intensity anaerobic exercise may result in his performance decreasing. The client is trying to gain muscle mass throughout his program while also keeping other components of fitness the same level or higher. These are specific to the client's aims and will be measured by we'll compare the client's BMI at the start and compare it to his BMI at the end using a skin fold caliper. This will give an indication of muscle gain, as more muscle would indicate he is leaner using a skin fold caliper. Specific session aims. During the session, I will be showing the client how to safely do the exercises from the program and introduce new exercises to the client so the workout can be done outside of my jurisdiction. How these aims specific to the client's aims and how will be measured to check for success. We will compare and correct the client's form throughout the session to be sure the client is carrying out the session properly and safely. This is the risk assessment for the client. The hazards I saw were cramps, tripping, slipping, injuries, weight falling or excessive weight. This could affect all participants and people leading the session. This is the client's PAR-Q. Okay. The resting heart rate for the client is 74 beats per minute. The average heart rate for a male is 60 to 90 beats per minute, and it can be lower if it's a trained athlete. The target heart rate zone is 165 to 190 beats per minute. There is no real average, as I used the Carbonen's principle to figure this out. The client is 16, therefore his target heart rate zone for anaerobic exercise is between 165 and 190, indicating that the client will be working at about 70 to 90% of his heart rate max. His resting blood pressure of the client was 124/74, and the average is below 130 to 90, indicating that the client is healthy. Peak flow result for the client was 580. As results are done by height, the average for the client's height is 600, so it's a little bit below. The client's BMI was 24.8, and the average is less than 25, indicating that he is again healthy. Due to previous testing of the client, I already know the client's heart rate, resting blood pressure, peak flow results, and BMI. The only worrying one is his heart rate. Just because the client is an athlete, we would expect his heart rate to be a bit lower, but it is not above average or below average, and I know that the client does not have any medical history problems. Peak flow result may also be a worry. It's slightly underneath, which may show he has asthma, but I know from previous testing again that the client does not have this. Exercise session content. The location would be the Basvik Sports Hall. The facility needs are a small corner of the sports hall. The resources needs are weights, barbells, and dumbbells. The health and safety considerations. The client needs to be dressed wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and trainers. The t-shirt will allow for full range of movement at the joint due to the client working arms as opposed to wearing a jumper. This will also make thermal regulation easier for the client, as his body temperature will increase whilst working. The client and I need to be aware of people around when using the weights. There may also be people who need to use the weights, and therefore we will need to be aware of the time we have for the weights. At the end of the session, the equipment needs to be cleared back to where it came from. Emergency procedures. In case of an emergency, the client will need to know where the fire exit is, and will be shown this before the session during the introduction. if I needed to attend to someone else other than the client, I'll need to avert my attention to the injured person away from the client and attend to them however I can. If there is a risk of injury, I will try to remove my client from the risk and see how it can be adapted. If my client is the risk, for example, he's using the weights, we will move as far away from people and inform my client as the risk prior to beginning the exercise. Issues arising from the risk assessment. Issues with the weight being secured may occur, such as weight plates falling off the barbell or dumbbells falling. Injuries occurring because weights are heavy and dangerous may also occur, such as strains on the muscle. There are also the risk of the participants straining the muscles due to not stretching well enough before the session. For the warm-up, I said I would go through with the client, explain to the client who I am, what they will be doing in the session, and how I will be doing this. I would be checking the client's form and weight they were handling, and I will behave assertively. For the warm-up, the client will be doing some static and PNS stretches, mainly focusing on the arms and the chest, or the whole upper body. The warm-up was windmills, crossing the arms and holding them, reaching behind the back and holding, the upwards dog, and toe touches. I said that it's activity related, therefore we will not need much room, as we are using weights and space will not be a big necessity, as it is only me and the client. Main content. The workout session for the client was split into 3 different. There were also alternative exercises. The alternative exercises were decline push-ups for 8 reps, dumbbell chest flies and holds for 8 reps, shoulder lateral raises and hold for 10 reps. And this was mainly because the client had an ankle injury. The activities were split into 3 different parts, targeting different areas of the upper body: bicep and tricep, core and back, and chest and shoulders. Between each set, the client would have a 30-second break. That's 1 set completed. For each completed 3 sets, the client would have a 45-second break. So, for example, when moving on to bicep and triceps and core and back, you would have a 45-second in between that break. And between each exercise, the client would have a 15-second break. An example of this would have been bicep and triceps, dips of 12 reps and then a 15-second break. Bicep curls of 10 reps and then a 15-second break. And push-ups for 15 reps and then a 30-second. Once this has been repeated 3 times, or each exercise has been repeated 3 times, the client will receive a 45-second break before moving to core and back, where the same will be repeated again. The cool down. I said I would use this time to talk to the client and how he felt about the session whilst doing the cool down. The cool down will consist of stretches. A short jog will not be necessary, as the client has only been training his upper body throughout the session, and the circuits are very close, therefore little to no lactic acid will be built up. The cool down consisted of toe touches, upwards dog, downwards dog, leg spread and stretching towards the feet, same thing on the other foot, and crossing the arms and holding them. Ending the session, we made sure that everything was packed away and that everything was put where it should be. For the client, my client's aims. I felt my specific program's aims were to assist the client in achieving his main goal of gaining muscle mass while still being efficient and maintaining components of fitness throughout the program. I'll do this by recommending to the client exercises he should do over the 6 weeks and planning out sessions that he can do. These are specific to the client as it would help him get closer to and achieve his goals. These could be measured using a skinfold caliper and scale at the end of the program to see how lean the client is compared to the start and how much weight has been increased. For the session aims, I felt my specific session aims were to administer the session and make sure the client understood how to complete an example workout, a warm-up and cool-down that the client should and will be doing every session. I will do this by administering the workout plan to the client, demonstrating the exercise and adjusting the client's mistakes if need be. These are specific to the client as it aims to help him get closer to and achieve his goal, and could be measured compared to an ideal form or a known athlete's form. This is the photographic evidence of the session, the warm-up, the main content and the cool-down. This was the client's feedback. He said that he felt it was a good session as it was progressively demanding and targeted all areas of his upper body. He felt I could have shown demonstrations for all of the exercises and shown demonstrations earlier. The client was happy. I didn't treat him as a client but instead as a friend at the gym due to encouragement and charisma. The peer observer feedback. She felt that I had a good alternatives to the session plan when the client had hurt himself during, and she felt that I should not have looked at my session plan as much as I did, as it made it look as if I was unsure of what I was doing. I thought my session plan went well, except for some points during it of which I didn't show examples to the client. For example, when doing a push-up, I explained to the client how to do it, but never gave a visual demonstration. I also did not consider having alternatives for more than one issue. For example, I planned for the client's ankle injury, but not for wrist pains, therefore I had to adapt. Finally, I was told by the peer observer that I looked at my session plan too much throughout the session, which I also agree with. It made me look unsure of what I was doing, and it may have led to the client having less trust in me. For my strengths, I again thought the session went well and I completed all. I felt that I completed all targeted areas for the client. I felt that I was enthusiastic and charismatic throughout the session. I offered the client support and I had an alternative plan for the session. The peer observer gave me feedback saying she felt I had improvised well with the alternatives for the session, as it was not the client's main injury. The client felt the session was good and felt that I encouraged him throughout the session by treating him as a friend as opposed to a client, and also felt it was progressively demanding and targeted toward areas of his upper body. Program writing. I thought I planned my session well, except for some points. An example of this was how much weight the client could handle doing the exercise. For example, the client used a light weight of 8 kilograms for the dumbbells, which seemed to have been too easy for him. I also felt that I didn't plan for the wrist damage to the client, as the workout had a lot of stress on the wrists. For example, the reverse burpees and the push-ups. And finally, I felt that I should have brought heavier and lighter weights for the client, as he struggled with the shoulder and lateral raises during the second set, and the dumbbell curls were too easy for him. Strengths. I also felt my session planning had a lot of strengths. For example, I had planned for the session to fall within a time span, with extra time for explanations and introductions. During the session, my plan for the length of the time span worked well. When planning, I checked beforehand that the client did not have any new injuries except for his current known ones in order to not put any more stress on him. Finally, I used dynamic stretches and targeting the whole upper body in order to prepare for the exercise, which I felt was useful during the session.